In this video, we will continue our video series on the ASV scanning and attestation process for customers and ASVs that use one of Saint's products for the attestation of scan compliance process. In previous videos, we've described the processes for creating scans, reviewing the results, and creating your ASV identities. In this video, we will describe the process for submitting disputes to the ASV, reviewing the status of disputes in progress, as well as disputes that have been completed. During the review of the scans that show a failed result, as we can see here on the screen, there may be times that you have evidence that scan results may not reflect an accurate outcome. If that occurs, the ASV program does provide support for a dispute process between you, the customer, and your ASV. In the screen here, we see the scans that we've run to date. We have a few different scans, and we see that a couple have failed. We want to navigate to these scans by clicking on the scan page, as we've done in previous videos, and then we can look at the status. If you don't see the PCI status in your data grid, you can look at the grid actions, column selector, and you can look at various options to add. In this case, this PCI column was available over here, and we click the plus button to add it. And then we've just taken our cursor, put it up a couple of places by drag and drop. And now we can see the PCI column there. So after navigating to this page, we see that this has a checkbox beside the scan. In some cases, you'll just see the dispute process enabled for the scan, depending on what information you have. But we'll look at this job and we'll look at the results. You can do that quickly, either by navigating to the Analyze tab and looking at all results, or if you just look at the detail, as we did here, and look at the view, the execution history, and look at view results. And we can go quickly to the scan results. As you can see here, we've got a couple of results that were vulnerabilities, or at least different services that were enabled. And we see the issue. We have an open SSH vulnerability that failed, and we see the target that it failed on. In this case, it was an AWS resource. And we see that the rating was high according to CVSS scores, as well as the PCI failed status. Now we can look at the tutorial information for any record to see what information that we need in terms of resolution. In this case, it would say upgrading to an SSH version. But for the purpose of this illustration, we'll look at a scenario in which that is the version that's running, and for some reason the scanner was not able to detect that version accurately. So if we have the evidence to dispute that and show that evidence, we can click on dispute. And we'll see a pop-up dialog that gives us information about the vulnerability we're disputing, as well as the type of dispute we want to introduce. There could be compensating controls, such as a configuration or air gapping a network configuration or something of that sort, that would be acceptable to PCI in terms of, even though the vulnerability exists, there are controls in place to mitigate. We disagree with the CVSS score. That one's a little bit more difficult to overcome. Many times PCI will defer to the existing severity score that comes from NIST, but there may be cases to where you have evidence that that severity may not be as high as NIST has computed, and the ASV can look at that and do investigations for you and possibly disagree with that score and change it. False positive, that can be an example where something in the configuration or where that version occurred that wasn't easily identified through the scanner, particularly with an uncredentialed scan, which is fairly common. PCI does not currently require the ASV scan to be a credentialed scan, and in some cases, when you're looking at software versions, that can be very difficult to detect. So in this case, we'll look at, there's a false positive, and we have evidence in this case. And we'll just state our reason for that. And we have evidence. So in this case, we'll choose a file, and our evidence is a screenshot that we have and how we obtained it through and we get information about how we obtained that version. Now, you may have cases where you have multiple files you want to submit, and you can do that by just adding a row and introducing other files. In this case, we just had the one version that will provide evidence. And before submission, payment card industry requires that you attest that the evidence you provided is accurate and complete. So we'll do that by selecting the OK button. And now your dispute has been submitted. If you want to look at the status of ongoing disputes, you can do the select column from your grid actions, select the dispute status, and then we'll scroll up here and select OK. And now the dispute status is available in the grid for the results. And we can refer back to this at any time. You may have multiple disputes under action, and you can look at various statuses, either as a filter or just looking at all the results that you have. If we navigate back to our scans, you'll see that we still have our 2 scans that have failed. And at any given time, we can look at various information about the scans and drill down as we did before. If we look at the scan results, in this case, we want to look at our active disputes, and we have the one case that we've opened up. So once you've opened up a dispute, the analyze options will give you information about what dispute you have in progress, as well as the scan results. In this case, we still see that that dispute is open. So if we go back to scans, you'll notice that we have a checkbox for these options. So even though this scan has failed compliance up until now, we can still continue the attestation process to see if there's anything else that we need to resolve. So in this case, we found 2 issues during the scan. First, there's no results were found for one of the hosts. That can often be because the host was not available. Maybe there was a firewall or a load balancer or something that was blocking access to that scanner. So while you're waiting for the dispute process for the failed results, if you start this process and you see a message that no results were found for one of the hosts, we do recommend that you go back and investigate the reasons why. And if we want to look at the current status of our failed results, we can even select that here from the request process. And it will navigate us back to that one result that we still have under dispute. So once all your disputes have been resolved, what you'll see is when you go into the attestation process, that these messages have been resolved, and then you'll be able to move into things like special notes, selecting the identity that you've created through another process, and then completing the attestation process. So this verifies the disputes are resolved and you can submit for your final attestation. Submitting scans for attestation will be covered in the next video in this series.